Hi everyone, my name is Matt, and in this video I'm going to talk about Cambodian literature and its significance in Cambodian history, especially the tragic events of 1970s that claimed almost 2 million lives. In particular, I'll focus on one famous story in Cambodian literature in both oral storytelling as well as literary form. One scholar has gone as far as saying that this story caused the genocide of Cambodia in 1970s. I personally don't agree, but as we will see, the story's end may seem to suggest something. Angkor Wat, when it was first discovered by the French explorer in 1850s, they considered it to be a lost European civilization that rivaled the Roman Empire in its beauty and significance. Now we know that it wasn't built by Europeans, but built by Khmer civilization that ruled the region for 600 years. Unfortunately, they didn't leave much behind in terms of written evidence as they moved their capital to modern-day Phnom Penh. Angkor was completely abandoned and the forest claimed it and remained obscure for 300 years. The early literature of Cambodia is mostly Buddhist in nature, which is expected as religion dominated the literature and learning. The early epic poems of Riamkher is a Cambodian version of Ramayana, the ancient Indian epic tale of Prince Rama's exile. In the 19th century, Ang Duong, who is considered the great king of Cambodia from 1841 to 1860, who, by the way, invited the French to help Cambodia against the Thai and Vietnamese encroachment that resulted in Cambodia becoming a French protectorate. But he was also a novelist. He wrote two famous novels, Kake, about a cheating wife, and Kongre, about a faithful wife. These are very well-known stories in Cambodia. A famous oral folk tale of Cambodia is called Vorvong and Sorvong, about two princes who are mistakenly expelled from the court to face 10 years of hardship, but finally they return to regain their royal status. This story emphasizing a second chance in life. The first modern novel of Cambodia is called Safot by Rim Kin and published in 1942. It's about a father and son and lover that juxtaposes Cambodian countryside to Phnom Penh. It's only in Khmer and in French, so unfortunately I couldn't read it. It does sound like a very fascinating novel. Most of the recent novels set in Cambodia are written in the last 30 years, especially by new generation of Cambodian Americans. They all focus on the atrocities of the Khmer Rouge in the 1970s. I wanted to read something before the genocide, something that people of Cambodia are familiar with or read in schools. Anyway, the only work I could find in English is a novel in verse that bridges folktale with modern realist novel. Its origin is in oral storytelling, and apparently it was based on a real event that took place in the 16th century in Cambodia. It was written in literary form in 1915 by a very famous Cambodian writer called Venerable Som. He wrote this tale in verse form and now translated in English. A very important work of Cambodian literature that is widely known throughout the country and has influenced many novelists, also singers for hundreds of years. It's also taught in schools since the 1950s. Tum Teav is a tragic love story. For English speakers, this tale is very similar to Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare, who wrote it around the same time as this tale is supposed to have taken place. Tum is a Buddhist monk who has a very good voice. One day he travels to villages to sell things and comes across a very beautiful young girl called Teav. They fall in love immediately. He has to return to the temple, but he decides to give up monkhood, much to the disappointment of everyone, and returns to Teav. They somehow manage to find each other and they make love. But around this time, Tum is summoned to the court of the king to become a singer. Teav's mother is the antagonist in the story. She wants to marry Teav to the son of provincial governor. So now there are two men in love with Teav. But there's another twist. Teav's beauty is such that she is handpicked and brought to the royal palace to marry the king himself. Now we have three men, Tum, governor's son, and the king trying to marry Teav. The governor's son cancels his engagement to Teav as he cannot compete with the king. Tum, hearing this news, sings a song confessing his love for Teav When the king hears this, against all odds, he steps aside and allows Tum and Teav to marry each other. When Teav's mother hears the new development, she pretends to be sick to bring Teav back home. Once she is back, her mother forces her to marry the governor's son. Teav sends a message to Tum about the wedding. Tum gets a written order by the king to stop the wedding, but here's the tragic twist. Tum gets drunk and he cannot deliver the king's order. Drunk, he announces in public that he is Teav's true husband and kisses her in front of people. The governor's son orders his men to kill Tum. Teav is devastated and she commits suicide. When this tragic news gets to the king, he comes and executes the governor's family and 7 generations of their relatives and enslaves the whole villages. Even their children are taken to the field and dismembered. This revenge is so horrific that some scholars have linked this saga to the Khmer genocide of 1970s that killed 2 million people and their so-called rewriting history to year 0. Alexander Hinton, a scholar, wrote an article detailing the similarities between the ending of this story to the way Khmer Rouge perpetrated genocide. The article is titled "A Head for an Eye: Revenge in Cambodian Genocide." I personally do not think there is a direct correlation. Genocide is not unique to Cambodia. It's taken place in many countries and territories throughout the history. The most recent ones in the Balkans against the Bosnians by Serbs, in Rwanda, and many other countries. As we all know that Khmer leaders believed in extreme form Marxism and pure Khmerism. They wanted to return Cambodia to a pre-industrial world where people lived on farms and lived simple lives. They got rid of currency and moved all city dwellers to the countryside to work in fields and killed all the educated and intellectuals. This was more paranoia. They were afraid of people who knew things. The king's revenge at the end is pretty harsh and exacting, but it's questionable whether the Khmer Rouge leaders were somehow subconsciously influenced by this tale. The article by Alexander Hinton argues that revenge is so inherently innate in Cambodian culture that this story just symbolizes that. If so, why we haven't seen any genocides right after Pol Pot was deposed? Cambodia somehow reconciled and seemed to be very peaceful right now. Anyway, going back to this story, I enjoyed it. I found Tum's dilemma of religious duty versus love very interesting. The last story I read about a monk and love was in Korea. This idea of love in Buddhism is a very common story in the region. You will find many things in this story about Cambodia. The village life, mothers marrying their daughters to a prosperous family, class struggle, religion in the way of love. But I found the main theme of this story to be obedience. If Tum listened to his Buddhist abbot, if Teav listened to her mother, if the governor listened to the king, it seemed that questioning the authority leads to trouble. It's very fatalistic in that sense. I don't know how much Cambodians adhere to this authoritarian way of life, but there are numerous stories in Cambodian literature, like Kake, written by none other than the king himself, is about obedience. The consequence of disobedience is always tragic, as evident in this story, and many more. I would also like to congratulate George Chigas for doing an amazing job translating it into English. It lived in memory for 250 years before it was written down. So there are a variety of versions, and it's a very, very important story in Cambodian literature. That there are many movies about it, there are songs that are inspired by this story, and there are many plays and performances based on this story. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. Would you read it? I would love to hear it. Thank you very much.